الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. وقال الله تعالى في مقام الآخر وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد معدن الجود والكرم وآله وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. My respected elders, brothers and sisters, and listeners of Radio Dawn, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sight is a great gift from Allah, and this great bounty and gift of Allah allows us to see the beauty around us. It helps us to understand our surroundings. It gives us an important and valuable information and knowledge about our context, our position, our location, our environment, and really, without it, we are in fact in utter darkness. And the Quran talks about this kind of blindness, people who are deprived of the sight, yet they can see with eyes, yet the Quran calls them صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ فَهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. They are deaf, blind and dumb. They do not understand. They have eyes, the Quran says, but لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهِ. They do not see with them. They have ears, but they do not hear. Eyes, but cannot see. And this is not just a metaphor, it is actually a reality. Maulana Rumi tells a story, a fascinating story of how a Hindu guru wants to test and teach his followers something. So what does he do? He brings an elephant in the dark, brings an elephant, and then puts the elephant in a dark room, completely dark, utterly dark, no light whatsoever. And then he sends them into this room and says, go and see what there is in this room and come back and describe what you see. Of course, it's completely dark, pitch dark, black, they cannot see anything. One comes back and says, Guru, what I felt was, of course they couldn't see anything. He said, my palm fell on something. It fell on the trunk, and he said, it was like a water spout. Someone else's hands fell on the legs of the elephant, and said, it's like a pillar, a big tree trunk. Someone else's hands fell on the back of, and said, it's like a big throne. Someone's hands fell on the ears of the elephant, and said, it's like a leaf or a big fan. And everyone thought what they were describing was the complete and full picture, and that's it. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came into this world, that time is described as the Dark Ages by the European historians. Darkness, and darkness of knowledge, of understanding, of injustices. Okay. And the very place where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, that too was steeped in darkness, utter darkness. And like these disciples of the Guru, who put their palms and hands on different parts, everyone, Christianity claimed one part and said, this is what God is like, He's like a father. The Jews had another picture. The Parsis and the Persians had their own. The Persians had their own view. The Romans had their own view. The Hindus, the Buddhists, everyone had their own partial view of this great reality. Not just about God, but the entire reality. It was so piecemeal, it was so broken, and as a consequence, it led to all kinds of injustices, oppressions, and tyrannies. No wonder even the European historians call that period the Dark Ages. And that is when the Quran says, قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ. From God has come to you a light. A light that will remove that darkness and show you what the reality is. And can you just imagine how limited our hands are when we feel that is the scope of our understanding. As far as our hands can go, cover the area, that is what we see. But the eyes, of course, when they are lit by the light, and that's important. You know, the eyes are there. They had the eyes when they were in that dark room, but they could not see. There was something absent, the light. And that is what Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He brought that light that actually made them see. And of course, the eye has this great power. It can see wide, it's got a big angle. It can see, and it can cover the whole of the elephant, can be seen with the eye. Whereas the palms of the hand are very limited. Brothers, that is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought. We've been talking about loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about supporting and helping his great mission and his work. And of course, first of all, we try to understand the greatness, the grandeur, and in what esteem and what place Allah holds his beautiful, matchless, and this great prophet of his, this unique man that he created. And now it's important for us to understand what contributions his teachings have made to the civilization and to humanity. Undoubtedly, brothers, there is no doubt in the minds of Muslims that what the Prophet ﷺ brought was a great revolution. And without that revolution, where would humanity be today? Without that, the revolution that the Prophet brought. Because it was that revolution that took it off from its trajectory of darkness, of complete ruination. Had it gone on for a bit more, it would have completely been ruined and destroyed. But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was like a meter that actually changed the trajectory completely. Really. It changed the trajectory of humanity. From that way of destruction and ruins, he brought it into light and gave it a new way of looking, a new pattern of life. And we need to look at what were those great contributions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let me just look at some of his teaching. We don't have time in this short period, but inshallah I'm hoping to do a long lecture on the contributions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to civilization, and I'll be inviting some of you to that in a week's time. But let us just focus on one or two of his wonderful teachings, and you can just begin to see why they were so powerful and how they transformed humanity. Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu ta'ala says that one day the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to us, he said that اضمنوا لي ستا من أنفسكم. Give me guarantee of 6 things from yourself. And what will I do? أضمن لكم الجنة. I guarantee you paradise. You give me guarantee to do 6 things, and I guarantee you paradise. And he said, أصدقوا إذا حدثتم، أوفوا إذا وعدتم، أبدوا إذا أنتمنتم، احفظوا فروجكم، غضوا أبصاركم، كفوا أيديكم. 6 things he teaches. But these 6 things really are the basis of moral teachings and what really makes us good human beings. At personal level and of course at a collective level. And he says, first, whenever you speak the truth. Be truthful. And then he says, when you promise, always keep your promises. When you're given a trust, be faithful to that trust. So here, we are told to be truthful, we're told to be honest, and have that integrity. 2 very important virtues, truth and honesty. And then he says, احفظوا فروجكم وغضوا أبصاركم. Protect your chastity and be modest. Lower your gaze. غضوا أبصاركم literally means be modest. Don't be immodest. Don't be, in Urdu we say, بشرم. غضوا أبصاركم literally means बेशर्मी ना करो. निगाहों को नीचे कर लो, आंखें नीचे कर लो, मतलब ये कि बेशर्म ना हो जाते हैं, बेहयाई ना करो. And he says, احفظوا فروجكم. So these 2 are again very fundamental teachings. In fact, these were the problem with the Romans was, of course, they had become very materialistic. The Romans were lost in hedonism and narcissism. That is self-worship, really, self-gratification, and being selfish, to such an extent that you've heard these, in their last heydays of the Roman Empire, they had gone down so much in their moral character, and really sunk to the lowest of the low, really, in every sense. And of course, that marked the beginning of the end of their great empire as well. And one of their problems was this: they had lost complete sense of modesty, as we are beginning to see in our society today. And that is where, I'll come back to what are the implications of this teaching for us today as Muslims. And the last and 4th very important thing he says is kufu aydiyakum, which literally means stop your hand. But what it's saying is again a metaphor for being just and fair in your dealings. Never be unjust, never be oppressive and tyrannical. And here, we see that Rasulullah is teaching us to be truthful, honest, modest, and just and fair. These are the 4 cardinal moral virtues, brother, on which any good society has to be based. If it is to be a good society, if it is to flourish, if it is to be peaceful and safe society, then it has to have these things in it. There has to be truthfulness and honesty. There has to be modesty. And there has to be justice in it. And these were the very basis of Rasulullah's moral teachings. And then what does he say? He says, well, if you practice these things, I, Muhammad I give you guarantee. Admanu lakum. I give you guarantee that I will take you to paradise. So brothers, this is the sort of transformation that Rasulullah wanted to see within his people. And when we look at what are the contributions of Rasulullah to humanity, you will say, well, there were other people who are given these teachings. Yes, of course, Buddhists had given teachings. The great sermon of Christ on the Mount, is famous moral teachings. Yes, so were teachings of Moses and Musa and Dawood, etc. They were great teachings. And they were, of course, reflections of this as well. But what had happened was, no longer were they seen valid and relevant. No longer was there anybody to implement them and to give them the glory that they deserved, really. So Rasulullah wasn't bringing anything new. The Quran never claims to be actually a new book. It doesn't claim to be that. What does it claim to be? It claims to be Musaddiqa. This is one of the titles and the names of the Quran. It is repeated. Musaddiq, which means the confirmer, the one which attests to the previous scriptures. Therefore, the Quran never rejects the Injil or Zabur or Torah as such, or the Suhuf of Ibrahim and the other books. It doesn't reject them as such. In fact, in one of the hadiths, the Prophet himself says, Hadithu an Bani Israel. You know, you can report and narrate stories from the Bani Israel. La haraj, no problem, narrated by Imam Muslim. So there is no problem. The Quran didn't bring something new. But the way that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought it was very special. It was very powerful. It was very revolutionary. He was able to bring about this transformation, this change within a very short period in one of the most, one can say, the uncivilized, uncouth and backward society, the Arabs. He was able to bring this huge change in them and give them momentum, give them energy and motivation that actually they were able to implement this in their lives and also to be able to teach and to change other cultures and other societies, and then of course have an impact on the entire human history. So that is a reality that had it not been the teachings of Muhammad Rasulullah, there would be no women's right today. Because the person who really focused on human rights was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came and he taught. If you look back at our books written in the 8th century, Muslim books written in the 8th century, that is more than 1300 years ago. If you look at them, what do they talk about? There is always chapters of hukuk al-ibad, hukuk al-walidain, hukuk al-jar, the rights of parents, the rights of neighbors, hukuk al-bahayim, the rights of the animals as well. And it talks about social, in other words, social obligations, how to live in a society where you respect one another. And those really were what transformed the society and humanity at that time. And of course, this all began with Rasulullah's huge impact and revolutionary teachings about the beliefs. The world was sunk in superstitions, as we know very well. Not only the Arabs, the pagans, and the idol worshippers were sunk in darkness, but even the people of book, the Christians and the Jews, were equally steeped in darkness and steeped in superstitions. One just needs to look at their belief system and some of the things that happened, around it. There's no doubt about the darkness and the superstitions that was common not only in the idol worshipper, but the people of the book as well. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teachings changed all that. It had a huge impact, really. Slowly, of course, it transformed, and that transformation, first of course took place in the Muslims and in the Muslim world, which, by the grace of God, spread vastly and rapidly against a phenomenon in human history that has never been repeated and had never happened before. At the speed at which the deen of Rasulullah, the light of Islam, spread from Mecca to the far east in China and in the west as far as Granada and Spain. This was another great, miracle really and the reason being because there was so much darkness and the light was needed. Everybody was waiting for that great light. So brothers, we Muslims need to do more about this. I wish, we had researchers on Seerah who could really, and on history. You see, we Muslims don't have historians amongst us, sadly. Do you know that? There's only a handful of Muslim historians. And that is why we cannot argue, we cannot present these beautiful teachings and show how Rasulullah and these teachings transformed that dark time and dark ages. And again today, we are in a way, this whole idea of clash of civilizations and this whole idea of the new world order, of course this is a new kind of darkness. And the only way to tackle this, the only way we Muslims can make a contribution to enlighten this is really to translate the teachings of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the idiom and the language of the 21st century, to make it really relevant that here is a way out of this darkness. I wish and pray that our students, our young people, will go into studying history so that we can really bring about, and teach others and tell them what contributions Islam and the teachings of our great Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought to humanity. Finally, here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that if you do these 4 things, I guarantee you paradise. Let us all, inshallah, brothers, make this promise that, Ya Rasulullah, in this mosque, in the presence of our Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we pray and we promise to be those who are truthful, those who are honest, those who are modest. Now, modesty is really important in this age of, where there is almost obsession with sex, and there is total, disregard for, the modesty and humanity. Really, it's lost. When primary schools are told that they have to teach 7- and 8-year-old sex education, it just shows you how sick and wretched the society is becoming. And this is why it's so important for us, as the Prophet says, "Ihfazu furujakum waddu absarakum." O young Muslims, guard your sights, lower your gaze, be modest, keep yourself chaste and pure and clean. There is a serious problem. The problem being that, we are marrying our young people later. It almost seems as though, late 20s and early 30s or late 30s. That is absolutely, I can't say it's haram, I'm not giving the fatwa that it's haram, but I don't think it's very far from being haram, really. Those who delay their marriages so long, and those parents who delay it and were not really sometimes bothered, and they think they can safeguard their girls, they can, safeguard their boys. You cannot, and this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to the young Muslims, he says, young Muslims, get married. Okay? And this is a security for you. And it purifies you. Purifies means it will keep you out of crimes, it will keep you out of wrong ways of life, and otherwise you will succumb to them. So I really do urge, parents to think, young people themselves, sometimes old parents, sadly, cannot see that need of young people. That is where young people themselves have to stand up. And other relatives and friends, if they have friends who they see, you've got to give them this nasiha, this advice, And I often get people, saying, can I do tawbah after doing a qanah? I say, well, you can do tawbah, but how many times are you going to keep on doing tawbah and this sin and repeating it and doing tawbah? Why don't you nip the bud? Why don't you get married? That is the only way. This is what Rasulullah says. And brothers, this is a safe policy. And then he says, be just and fair. Keep everybody safe around you. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillah.